Hey, this is Sasha Jenson, and I want to invite you to the Don't Go Out There podcast. Come join me and keep screaming.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. Just want to thank all our fans and listeners. Really appreciate the support. You guys are awesome. I'm super excited for this upcoming interview. We are joined today by another legend of the business, known best for his roles in Dazed and Confused, the OG Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and of course, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sasha Jensen. How are you doing?
Oh, good. I'm as happy to be here as you guys are. It sounds like we're doing what we like to do, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Mr. Jensen, we just always like to start all of our interviews by asking, what is it that got you into acting? Was it just the family business or did something else spark that fire?
I didn't know any better. It was definitely a family business. My dad was a character actor. I grew up in I grew up in L.A. I kind of view myself as a Hollywood townie, and um, yeah, I grew up on movie sets, and that was my, that was my farm. And when I got older, I was always kind of like the kids. Like I was a kid, and they'd like, "Oh, throw them in there." And I'd go on locations with my dad, and all of a sudden, I'm wearing like an Indian outfit or this or So I did a bunch of little stuff, and I thought, well, later on, I'm like, well, what when you start thinking about what you're going to do, and I was like, well, Dad gets to go to Spain for 2 months. What's he doing? I
There
want
you
to do
go.
that. I know all the other dads are working really hard, and it seemed like my dad was having a good time, and so I thought, all right, and then and then I dipped my toe in it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I get it, and I fell in love with acting, and I like okay, and then I really got into it, and I loved it. I studied hard, and went to New York and Italy and Scotland, and I was like, okay, this is what I learned that it was actually an art instead of like this fun thing that my dad did, you know.
Right.
And yeah, so yeah, there you have it. That's how that happened. If you
Awesome.
remember, do you remember? You remember Chinatown, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he played like the heavy in those movies forever. Like he got killed by everybody, and like Clint Eastwood killed him, 20
Nice.
times, and they always fought. And yeah, so that was yeah. So he played the heavy in quite a few things.
Awesome. Well, talk to us a little bit about Ghoulies too. Early on in your career, was what was that experience like for you? And unless I'm mistaken, that was your first named and credited role.
The what a buddy of mine is like. I was in these acting classes, and kind of the way it's a little different now, I think. But it's kind of like when you're in LA in these little acting classes, and all of a sudden you get to know everybody, and everyone's like, everyone's the same age, and it's kind of like your early late teens or early 20s, and you're like, oh, did you hear about this? You hear about that? And you like bomb auditions, and you drive around a lot, and you have to be very aggressive,
Right.
or you can't be. You can always take different tactics, but I forgot who it was. A friend of mine was like, "Oh, this thing," and it's like cool. I was like, "But it goes to Italy." The whole thing was, it's going to Italy,
Nice.
and that was like all of a sudden me thinking about my dad was doing. I'm like, that would if I get that, that means I'm doing it. And yeah, so all of a sudden, it was like this weird little low budget, ridiculous, silly movie, but you get on a plane at 19 years old or whatever, and
Right.
you're staying, they're paying for you to stay in Rome at staying in a nice hotel and via Veneto by the fountains. And I was like, wow, this it was great. And the crazy thing is Malcolm McDowell was staying in the same hotel.
Oh, wow.
uh and so you don't think, because that was like kind of an era when the world was obsessed with Clockwork Orange,
Yes.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I'm in the same hotel as Malcolm McDowell, and he was shooting in the same studio. It was I think it was Dino De Laurentiis' studio. Is that what it was called? I think it was his personal studio. I can't really remember, but they were doing a bunch of schlocky things there. Uh, Malcolm was he was even doing a schlocky thing. They would just have to pay him a lot to do it. And
Right.
yeah, so I mean that's what it was about. It was really about it was about Italy. It was about being young. It was about like you felt like, oh, this is I've got my hand on the gauntlet here, and this is working out, and there's you meet good friends, and yeah, that's what that experience was. As far as the film goes, that was like it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. But back then they would drink wine during lunch, which we did a lot,
Nice.
and I think I was underage still. Um, yeah. So as far as the movie goes, I have zero zero memory of actually making it. Everything else was fantastic.
Awesome.
Hey, that's what's important.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're sick of answering Halloween 4 questions, but I do have to ask. So in 1988, the franchise is coming off a financial low point with part 3. They wanted to get back to the roots with the return of Michael Myers. Can you talk a bit about auditioning for part 4? Like, how did that whole part of Brady come about for you?
It was almost like perfectly in line with coming home from a Ghoulies too.
Oh,
It's like
nice.
it's like, wait a minute, what is this? Like another another movie that no one's gonna ever see. It's got a number next to it. Like I knew Ghoulies 2, no one was gonna ever see it, and I thought, well, I probably have to do a bunch of these before I get to be in a movie. And so
Right.
this one had a number 4 next to it, and number 3, I don't think anyone remembered, so it was already dead. It was already dead. And back then, if it had a number 3 next to it, it was dead. There was no like part 8, part 9. That just didn't happen
Right.
then.
Straight to
I mean, if
video
you, if
too.
you were number 3, it was dead, and now I'm in number 4. But it was weird because it's like it's number 4, so we kind of all thought like this is going to be nothing. But then the script was kind of cool, and then we got out there, and you're like I remember like first getting there, and the street was dressed eerily, and the house was great, and I was like, oh, this could be like a real fun thing, and
Right.
and then all of a sudden it became it's like, oh, this is it may never be seen. It'll probably never be seen because it's got a number 4 next to it, but this looks cool. This looks like a real movie. This could be a real movie. So auditioning, a friend of I don't even think a lot of. I think I was lucky because back then there were movies that people just didn't want to just wouldn't audition for, you know.
That
And
makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, they're like it's like the straight to cable. They were straight to cable movies,
Right.
And it's like, well, unless you really need, and you don't get paid a lot. You don't get paid much. It's like, okay, it's a scrappy job. You want to give it a shot? And I went in and I think I got it pretty quick, and I was so surprised, because it was kind of that was, I mean, what I would consider my first movie. I think I did a couple low
Right.
budgets. I did a couple low budgets before that, but they were really like you could tell those were low
Right.
budgets. This one was like, oh, this is like a real thing and on location and all that.
Right. Absolutely. And so, kind of sticking with Halloween, I've heard in other interviews your story about George Wilbur and how he worked with your dad as a stunt guy. And can you talk a little bit about your death scene where you guys almost, I believe, ad libbed a little bit some parts of your death scene to an extent? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was kind of it was a total ad lib because he was friends with my dad,
Right.
and my dad was like kind of like a big brawny kind of uh, well respected rough and tumble stunt guy who made it as a character actor because he was kind of a badass, you know and so all the stunt guys who came after him, like they were like, "Oh boy, you're Jenson. You're the Jenson kid, okay?" Like he was kind of
Right.
ominous, this ominous figure, and so I knew he was friends with my dad, and he was like, "Oh, you're a Jenson kid, It's like, well, we got to do something to make your dad proud, We're gonna do, and I'm like, and I kind of grew up in that world anyway, with a lot of the stunt. I had a lot of stuntmen friends and older guys, and so I'd go out to their ranches and learn how to motorcycle ride and rope and do stunt
Nice.
fights. And he was like, let's do something, because it wasn't really scripted, you know,
Right.
at all. It was like, okay, you're going to die and it's going to be gory and we have no idea, but let's just try and do something. And
Okay.
he was good. He's like, okay, we do the stairs, and then we just kind of, the fight made sense. The fight, to do the fight at the top of the stairs made absolute sense. It's like, okay, let's kind of improv this out. You're running up here. How do we do this fight? Oh, you get this great idea because you're going to save the day and shoot him. So you're going to be heroic. And you stop. It's like, okay, and this, of course, it's like, that's not going to work. And yeah, so, and of course, if you look at it, when he cut to me, I was hurling myself into the wall, just hurling myself, because it was like, okay, Dad, here we go. I'm showing you, I'm doing the fight. And it was kind of, it was kind of this comedic thing, but yeah, it was fun because I kind of feel like my upbringing came to, a fruition in that moment with, somebody who knew my dad, and it worked. It worked out well, and the whole, it was all very simple. It's like when he lifted me up, we had like a teeter totter under me. It's kind of very
Right.
real low tech, real low tech stuff, but everything about it looked kind of cool.
Right. Absolutely. Last Halloween question. We can move on. I promise. We mentioned Kathleen Kinmont earlier, and we've had Kathleen and Ellie, and I asked them the same question on when they were on earlier too. With this franchise and the whole Halloween thing kind of being at a fork in the road, there's a big push for them to revisit the Halloween 4 timeline, with Dwight Little even talking about a Halloween 4 Part 2. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, would you be keen to return in another role? I mean, maybe as Brady's father, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. As well, if I were Brady's father, I'd be, how old would I'd be? Really, really old. Um, Maybe Brady's. So they would return to the same timeline.
Dwight Little is pushing for it. Yes, sir.
Wow, I wonder what that story would be, other than, yeah, why not? I think it would be. I think it would be a blast. When I did it, I never thought anything of it. Um,
Right.
Other than when it came out, I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't embarrassed, and I thought it was kind of cool. But I go to these conventions now, and it's like, oh my god, this is amazing. There's so many people here, and it's has so much
Right.
energy, and like, and now history, and like, wow, this is great to be a part of. This is, it's fun. It's fun. It's a lot funner than I thought it was going to be. You know, it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah. For
surprising.
sure.
But yes, so why not? Why not? How fun would that be? I'd love to get killed again if I
Absolutely.
could.
Do you and Ellie and Kathleen and that entire cast, do you guys keep in touch? It seems like when you brought up conventions, when we've been to a couple of conventions, Kathleen and Ellie and at least her and Danielle, you can tell are pretty still close. Do you guys still talk every now and then?
You know what? Our relationships haven't. There hasn't been a pause in them, even if we don't see one another. Everyone's got
That's great.
kids and different lives, and but when we see each other, and it's, for me, it's been just a few conventions every now and then. And I
Okay,
mean, I went to school with Kathleen, so she's like an old school pal. I went to
that's right.
prom with her best friend.
Oh wow.
Which is, and then when I got on the plane in Burbank at the airport, she comes rolling up. I'm like, no way, it's you. You're like, and it was like, and she was always like the intimidating, most beautiful girl in school. And
Yeah, I can see that.
I was like, okay, how's this gonna play out? I'm really nervous about this, you know, and and yeah, but so we're all close, and we have a shorthand with one another. I haven't seen Ellie in a long time. I bumped into her like at a Starbucks, which was this is years. I'm sure this is years ago. I'm sure this is before. COVID. Um, but yeah, when you have those kind of experiences, there's a connection that
Yeah.
you don't even need to maintain it. You just like, oh God, I remember what an amazing time we spent together.
Yeah. So your other really big role that you're most known for, Don on Dazed and Confused. Could you talk to us a little bit about that role and your experience with that movie?
Um, so so that character was, I wanted to play the guy that I never was, which was the drunken kind of whirling dervish nightmare shipwreck of a teenager, you know?
Right.
And I kind of, I we got the wardrobe and it was like overalls and I was like Pigpen. I'm going all in Pigpen. And I kind of wanted to keep
Nice.
it that way, but they were like, "No, you got to put on something cool for the night." I'm like, I want to I just want to be Pigpen. I want to be the drunk idiot guy, and I still was able to do that, but I had to change the outfit. Um, so yeah, that was the kind of what we agreed on, what I should be, and then we had our friendships, because we had 2 weeks of rehearsal, so everybody
Okay.
had had a different energy kind of about them, and we were all in Austin and we were rehearsing, and it was like we were finding fun things and nuances and shorthands, um, and it just, that was one of those things where like, wow, I think this is going to be something good, because it felt very full, it felt very full kind of across the board, and everybody was feeling that energy grow, and and then Rick was fighting with the producers because they wanted us to not to swear at all ever, like not one
Oh,
curse word,
wow.
and he was, we were watching him fight, for that. It's like, no, what we're doing is something that's real, and how kids are, because back then, you think about that era, there wasn't any movies like that for kids,
Right.
and they're
Right.
marketing this thing as a teenage movie. So think of what were the big teen movies back then. It was
Like Breakfast Club and
yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
even,
Yeah.
but they were glossy and kind of sugar coated and bubble gummy, and
Oh, okay.
he was he was like, no, I don't want to do this, and they were like, we're never going to get a release. It's never going to happen. No one's going to see this movie, and he's like, I don't care. We're doing it. We're doing it this way, and we were fighting, and so we're watching him fight. We're all like, fuck yeah, fuck. you know, like, yeah, we're doing this. Is cool, right? We're all like, maybe no one's going to ever see it, but I think, so it felt really loose. It felt really loose, and all the personalities were able to kind of um, bond and find one another, and their friendship. The friendships were organic. The relationships were organic. They were like, we were hanging out all the time, and then for the second half of the movie, it was supposed to be nighttime, so we were shooting all night, every night for a month, and then
Wow.
during the day we would just go fuck off. We would like go, let's go to the river, let's go to because you're supposed to be kind of like tired and drunk anyway. So we
Right.
were just embracing it. We'd stay up all night
Nice.
and, maybe stay up all day the next day, or, so our clocks were totally upside down. Um, but as a group, and so
Right.
we all shared that, like, oh, everybody was punchy, you know,
Nice.
um, because, and I think that's the thing that made it. Because reading the script, I didn't even know what the story was about. Again, I was like, you read it, and I'm like, I don't get it. I have no idea what it didn't feel like. Who am I rooting for? Because those, scripts, you're like, okay, who do you root for? Who's the bad guy? Who's and this is
Right.
like,
Right.
I don't even know who the lead is in this. What is this?
Yeah.
It didn't make sense. And then we saw the first screening of it, and it didn't work. None of it made sense. And the thing that really pulled it together was the music. I mean, if you look at it again with the lens that look at it as a music video, because it's genius. Like it's just it's a constant music, and it's dialed in. Because we saw a version of it when it was not dialed in,
Right.
probably the same exact version, and we all walked out of there just going, oh my god, I don't know what it is, it didn't work. So yeah, it was interesting how kind of for
Hmm.
me it was saved by more
Right.
focusing on on that music because no one thinks about it like that.
No, that's great. No,
Well, music,
great
we've
point of view.
seen plenty of times where a score can make or break a scene. And so, yeah, for a movie, for
For
sure.
sure, for sure. But it's like you don't think about that as a viewer,
Right.
and
Right.
even if something like you watch it and it's like, okay, well that scene didn't work. You don't go, oh, if I put this music in there or if I did
Yeah.
that would save it. You just know it like that didn't work.
Yeah. So you're, according to IMDb, your last credited role was as Pat in Trust Me. That cast is just ridiculously stacked with stars. William H. Macy, Amanda Peet, Molly Shannon, and one of my favorites, Sam Rockwell. Can you talk a little bit about that movie and maybe some experiences working with that cast?
I didn't do much in it. Clark, who directed it, uh, is a good friend. I've known him forever, and he just called me up and said, "You want to?" It was one day. He's like, "Do you want to come in and play this part?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah, why not? What are we doing? What are we doing?" And I don't even know if I read the script. I don't even know if I read it.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Clark
but it
hadn't
was
got you in a Marvel movie yet.
what? No, I was wondering. I'm like, Clark, what about that show you're on though? It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
but he's not doing that anymore. But yeah, no, it was great. It was fun. I was like one of those things where I hadn't seen him in a while, and he reached out, and I was like, oh hell yeah, let's do this for fun. It was nice.
That's a great relationship. You just like, you can tell you've got a real good relationship. It's like, hey, do you want to do this? And you're just like, yep, I don't even need to read it. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, he was. Clark is very very. We know he's very very talented, and I I,
Oh yeah.
I knew him
Absolutely.
before. Before I think he even had a job. When he had a little tiny Honda and living in Venice in a single. And we were all everybody was scrapping along.
Right.
As a group, and then all of a sudden there's like, look at that skyrocket go, look at that, oh, what happened over here, and but yeah, I was there when and before with him.
Awesome.
Awesome. I love these stories. Mr. Jensen, you've done a lot of TV in addition to film. Can you talk about the difference as an actor in, doing TV versus film? And do you have a preference?
Well, I think naturally film because it feels like uh in theory it's more geared and more kind of focused on a performance. In theory, I don't even know, but um I think I had two I had one great TV experience on a episode of NYPD Blue where played this I played a sociopath, and I literally killed a family and torched the place, and then I like was one of those people who like stalks the crime scene and then gets caught and like tries to help, and throughout the whole episode, and you don't even know it. You don't know it's me. Like I'm just in the beginning. You're like, I'm the guy who's helping.
Ah.
And then Jimmy Smith's after a while, he's like, I don't know about this kid, this and that. And then we've got this really cool long interrogation scene where they crack me. Um, and so that was because it was David Milch was an amazing writer
Right.
at the time. And it's funny they somehow they combined two roles, and literally I got the job of this killer guy, but I guess there was an accomplice or something, and then I finally get the script, and the whole ending, it was like literally like, which never happens in TV, but it was like this 4-page monologue of like him drilling me, and then I go on the story, I go on the story, I go on the story, and
Right.
then he drills me again. But it was so much dialogue, and I go to the set the first day, which was kind of more like establishing and walking around New York City and all that. We were shooting in LA, and Jimmy Smits, he's like, you're making him do all these pages in 2 days from now. And he changed the whole, he changed the schedule. It's like, this guy needs more time for that, because you can't just throw this on him. And it was kind of, it felt like, I'm like, it felt like a great performance. It felt like in that moment it was being viewed as, a performance that one could do in a movie. I think TV, you may not. I mean, it's probably different now, but back then it felt like, this is a movie performance, and in one of these
Right.
kind of edgy episodics. So, yeah, I think either or really, to
Gotcha.
answer that.
So I understand you're writing and producing a movie with Casey Lascala called Gnaw. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, that's great. So Na is, and it's hopefully going to land right here in on your podcast again. It's obviously a genre movie, um, and you know how when you read a newspaper or you see something in the news and you're like, oh my god, how did that? You mean that woman killed her 5 children? Like, how could anybody do that?
Right.
Or did you hear that dad like drove his car with the whole family into a wall? Like, how could, every time you ask that, how could that have happened? How could that have done that? This evil is the answer to that question. Um, and so, uh, without getting too deep into it, is basically this evil in the story has the ability to kind of latch on to uh, psychological scars, personal psychological scars. It has a mythology, that goes back to a Celtic era. And what it does is it targets children, targets youth, it targets innocence. It's almost like The Shine in The Shining. It's
Right.
like, if you remember, kind of more so in the book, it's there wasn't really an explanation for what that evil does. It's what it did do, which was kind of fun, is it reminded the dead who weren't aware that they're dead. It reminded them that they were dead, which pissed them off. Um, and for some reason, then it would want to target people who have the shine. And so what is
Right.
that? So this is, I'm not we're not exactly that, but it's like there's this thing that is hunting innocence. It latches on the scars, the psychological scars of the vulnerable people. Because, like, you
Right.
think, like, who's the mom that actually kills that? Well, okay, then you go, like, then you hear her backstory. It's like, oh, well, did you hear her? Her dad used to beat her, and then she took drugs. And so she had all these, like, burdened uh, psychological scars. It's like, then you go, like, oh, of course, she never had a chance. Of course she was going to kill people. Of course she was going to go
Right.
postal. So this evil finds those elements, targets what it wants, uh, the way it wants, and can manipulate, people to where they see and feel things that aren't there. Almost in the world of kind of Smile. Like, all of a sudden, if you remember in Smile, she was hallucinating. Because the evil was making her see what it wanted her to see.
Right.
This thing has the ability to do that. And our first version is our main character. A lot of her trauma as a kid, which you learned later, was kind of uh, during that time. There was a lot of fairy tales in her life, like the old kind of grim fairy tales, like almost like when people want to try and sugarcoat something, like, don't worry honey, you'll be okay, let me read you a fairy tale. And you just repress all that stuff. You repress it, you repress it, repress it. Well, the evil goes, oh, I remember that. I remember I remember all those things. And so
Uh,
while this thing grows, it just starts showing you. It just starts showing you kind of your past, and those things that haunt you, that you try to repress, drive you crazy, and make it do what it wants you to do. And so we're minutes away from going out with it. We're very excited about it. Um, Casey and I have worked together for a long time. I mean, we've sold a script to. We had James Mangold attached, who did Wolverine.
Right.
We have another thing that is an old Hollywood IP. And the only way I was able to get it was because of my history here. Is Rin Tin Tin, the old
Oh,
German
nice.
Shepherd dog. You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
I
right. It's
remember that.
crazy. It's hard to kind of. I mean, we have it at Warner Brothers, but then it got tied up in courts because there's always like hands on it. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, the Gnaw thing, we're excited about it. We had a great artist do that one sheet, or not. It's not a one sheet. It's just kind of like an inspired piece of art. Um, and I think it's gonna, it's gonna be fun. We'll keep you
Yeah.
posted on it, and then we can talk about it the next time around.
Please do. Would
Absolutely.
love to. Absolutely. Keep us in mind for sure. And kind of along the same lines you were talking about earlier with Dazed and Confused, with the Halloween franchise, even Ghoulies. I mean, you're still doing interviews and conventions about these characters almost, 30 years later. How does that make you feel?
It's kind of you never expect it.
Right.
It's kind of crazy, and I kind of feel incredibly lucky to have done. I mean, I haven't done a million things, you know,
Right.
but the few things that I've done, it's like they'll stand there on the shelf as as some form of an iconic piece of entertainment,
Absolutely.
which I think is hard, and which is I think is cool, And I the last convention, I mean, I don't do much. I don't do them much. I maybe every couple of years, but the last one we did, it was the Halloween one here in LA.
Hmm.
I couldn't find parking. There was like, I don't even know how many people were there. And, I was just like thinking of like, okay, I remember like getting on the plane with my little backpack, and, it's just like you never could imagine that. And I know Malik, Malik never could have imagined. I mean, he was a PA. He was a PA walking around with coffee, and we were joking, back then. And he was a kid now. He comes over to me every now and then. It's like, can you believe it? I'm like, I can't believe it, So, and but is like he really, really can't believe it.
Yeah.
So I feel really fortunate and lucky to be, yeah, to just have done something. I think Halloween is cool to be a part of, and I think Days and Confused is very unique and an
Very.
exciting thing to be a part of.
Yes, sir. And speaking of conventions, we have, we asked this little fun question. We started asking it almost 4 years ago now with when we had Lisa Wilcox on. What's the most memorable memory you have at a convention? It can be funny, sentimental, awkward. We've heard some wild responses, and we'd love to hear yours.
Um, this one was great. Uh, it was years ago, and I think it was in Jersey. They have one in Jersey, one of those big ones in Jersey. Um, and I think it was one of my first ones. And it was like full court. It was like, oh my god, they're really, really, really into this. And I was, because you have to, if you're doing it in LA, I just go home. But I was like, I think that's the first time I went on the road, um, staying in a hotel, and they had, all these kind of, I think like entertainment venues downstairs. They were all in. They were just doing it. And after you're there for a number of hours, you're like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna go, watch HBO or do something. And I think a couple hours had passed. I know that they were having something going on downstairs, and I was just tired. I'm not doing it. And I stepped out of the room probably like around midnight. I don't know why. I think I was like gonna go get ice or something. And literally, it was completely empty, except one guy who's totally into it by himself, dressed up as Michael Myers, walking with the thing, just walking back. And he was walking he didn't see me come out. He was walking the other way. So I was just like, what? Wow, what is he doing? And he was into his own thing. Michael Myers all the way down the hallway, and I just like, oh my god. And then I thought, If he just turned, I'm like, I don't even want to get into it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I'm like, this is fucking fantastic. This guy's crazy out of his mind. Uh, so that I think that's it. That was the
Wow.
best one.
Seems dangerous as hell too. That it seems. I mean, it just seems.
He was absolutely out of his
Wow.
gourd, and who knows? Who knows? You know?
He's probably listening to this show right now. If you know
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Okay, so before we let you go, tell us. I mean, you talked a little bit about Gnaw, obviously. You're writing, producing. Well, what else do you have going on? What's the future look like for Sasha Jensen?
Um, well, I mean, the, the just the short pieces are the short stories. Is yeah. I mean, we're excited. We're excited about Gnaw. We're about a minute, from going out to financiers and all that. I mean, I love that world. Um, I love the art that we could do in it. It has, kind of like a very, very fairy tale vibe that just goes darker and darker and darker. And there's a lot of fun stuff we could do. We could do with it. Um, and that is so funny. I never thought. I mean, I really, really love kind of horror. I was lucky when when I started writing, I sold a script at Disney, and Oliver Stone was attached to direct, and it was kind of, it was like mainstream movie, and it would have been a big event, and it never, of course, never got made. So many of those that never get made, but like this one, I love like these dark, twisting little stories, Um, so it's all about kind of pushing that ship forward
Right.
while I watch the courts fight over Rin Tin Tin, because
Right.
that's kind of a more of a kind of a possibly franchise thing, or it's at Warner Brothers, so that could that could be good. It's not going to be a passion thing, but it's fun. Um, and I think that's kind of what that's about as much as I have on the plate right now. Yeah,
Sounds like plenty.
yeah, could be.
No, sounds awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah,
Did you
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
you guys saw the artwork, right?
Yes, it looked fantastic.
Yeah, it looks fun. It looks fun. We had initial. We did a draft. We showed it to a couple, you know, friends, and we're getting notes. But it feels like it's one of those visceral kind of twisty movers. Like you're like going, oh boy, how great. It's like when a horror movie really gets in your gut and starts twisting you. Like The Ring. Or
Mm-hmm.
Right.
or
Right.
what was the other one that I was just watching? Um, I forgot, but you know the ones I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
So we're excited to play in that space for sure.
Well, whenever you're ready, you can come back on and promote it a little more. We'd be glad to do that for you.
You
You got
bet.
any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, no, no. I want to congratulate you guys on getting to do what you like to do, and chasing down this world of horror is a lot of fun.
It is. It is.
And
Ton of fun.
and hopefully you get more and more. I'm thinking of who could I give you? I'm gonna have to think about that, because I'm sure you could use more and more, because
Oh,
that's all
yeah,
about
Absolutely.
Yeah.
always.
it's all about great content for you guys and interesting folks. So
Definitely.
I'll think about that and see who that could be. But yeah, congratulations to you guys, and you know keep going, keep having a good time.
Thank you so
We
much.
Thank you.
appreciate it. That means a
Thank you
lot.
so much.